Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have an unboxing of the realme GT6T. Let's get started. This device arrived in Mexico along with its brother realme GT6 without the last letter T. So this letter T means that it will be a slightly trimmed edition but still interesting. Its launch price in Mexico has been 9,899 pesos. That's around $520, although remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. So what do you say we take them out of this box so we can take a closer look? But first, on the back, these are the parameters that realme highlights. Although this is when you're viewing HDR content, it also has a vapor chamber and load of 120 watts. These are the points that realme wanted to highlight. Now let's take it out. And first we come across this little box that's probably going to have a case and something like that. And as we were anticipating, in this case we find the tool to remove the SIM card tray. We also find a quick guide and other additional information, better known as the little pieces of paper. And finally we find a case that has a solid color. This is a nice thing because it's not a transparent case that's going to turn yellow afterwards, so it can give you more durability, although I personally don't like the color that much, but there it's a matter of personal taste. In fact, this window reminds me a lot of Poco devices. Maybe that's why I didn't like the case design too much, but let's continue to see what else is in the box. And as you can see here, I already have the cell phone in my hands. This is the silver edition. Honestly, it looks very nice. The design is very similar to its sibling, which, as I say, is the realme GT6. However, one of the differences at first glance will be the addition of a third camera on the GT6 model. Whereas in the GT6T, we actually find here a flash area. Obviously, it will also have a different processor and some other features. But let's get this device powered up while we see what else is in the box, and then we'll focus on seeing and knowing the specifications of this device. And as you can see, we're talking about a 120 watt charger, which was already anticipated by the label on the box. It is a super powerful charger. In this case, it comes with a European connector because it's a review unit, but obviously it's going to be adapted to your region when you buy it with official distribution. And here we're going to find also the cable, which is from USB-A to USB-C with a little bit of a short length but a very thick gauge to be able to transfer all that power. So it is obvious that if you want to take advantage of the maximum power of this charger, you need to use this original cable. Otherwise, charging will be much slower, and as usual, we will test the charging speed later. For now, we're going to put this all away again and focus on the cell phone so we can get to know it. And well, I already have the device in my hands, so let's get to know its specifications little by little. It is 8.65 millimeters thick and weighs 191 grams. In terms of design, I think it's an attractive device. The silver color is probably the element that I like most of its design. At the level of resistance, we will find Gorilla Glass Victus 2, although it is not water resistant. So, like any mid-range device will not be perfect in everything, there will be some points where they will have trimmed the features. The screen is 6.78 inches in its diagonal, full HD plus resolution of 2780 pixels by 1264. It additionally offers us a refresh rate of 120 Hz, and it has a touch sampling rate of 2500 Hz. It also has an attenuation rate of 2160 Hz. What does all this mean that I just told you? Well, that it will show us fluid movements, that the screen will also respond very quickly to the touches of your hand, and also that it will be quite comfortable to use at night with low brightness. And in this case, the manufacturer highlights that it has a peak brightness of 6000 nits, although that's exclusively when viewing HDR content. So some areas of the screen could emit more brightness, as you realize, to give a little more realism to the image. Watch the difference in this case from the gallery with the pictures with XDR and without XDR. That give it a different touch. So HDR you take advantage of on YouTube, on Netflix and other apps. And this screen is going to show you a lot of realism because of the tremendous capability it has in brightness. It also integrates stereo sound with a speaker at the bottom and dual output at the top. That is to say that the sound can come out of both the frame and the earpiece area for calls. It has good sound. In fact, it also has infrared. An unusual addition, but through the IR remote app, you can add some device to make it work as a universal remote control, so it can also help you a lot. The front camera is 32 megapixels with f2.4 aperture and fixed focus. And as usual, here's some quick tests. The preview, as you can see, doesn't look optimized. A looks very burned out in the background, but notice that after you take the picture, it does look very good in the shadows. So the result in the selfies is fine. So well, we found a good level of detail. Overall, we can say that it complies. On the back, we find the 50 megapixel main camera with Sony's LaDIA sensor, with f1.88 aperture and optical stabilization. Then there is the 8 megapixel camera with f2.2 ultra wide angle aperture. In this case, unlike its big brother, we find no telephoto lens. So I suspect that the zoom will not be as advanced, although the 600 lithium sensor can be well optimized. This is the ultra wide camera, just to give you a reference. This is the main camera with the automatic mode where the pictures come out well, but if you use the high resolution mode, you could definitely get a lot more detail, at least in theory, and I think it does do that well. It makes good use of the resolution of this sensor, so you get good pictures. This is a 2x zoom photograph, so you can see that it looks like it does seem to be able to maintain optical quality at this focal length setting. But I did some slightly more extreme zoom tests, and in this case I was honestly disappointed with the maximum zoom. This is 10x zoom, and I think that through the camera you don't really get to distinguish how little detail it has, but note that the maximum zoom is 20x. However, they shouldn't allow the 20x zoom because it is exaggeratedly forced. You see an exaggeratedly low level of detail. So in this sense, I was disappointed. And although it doesn't have a depth camera, it can take portrait pictures by blurring the background. In fact, it more or less tries to keep objects in focus, which is remarkable and allows you to take portraits from the traditional focal length and also from a telephoto distance of 50 millimeters. So the result is average. I wouldn't say excellent, but for the price range, I think it will perform well. Now, this device allows us to record video in 4K at 60 frames per second, although only with the main camera, since the front camera is limited to 4K at 30 frames per second and the ultra-wide camera in full HD at 30 frames per second. The battery is a tremendous 5,500 milliamp hours with 120 watt charging support included in the box. It can definitely become one of its most attractive points because generally in the price range the batteries are 5,000 milliamp hours, although we are going to do the test because we have already seen cases where smaller batteries yield more time and larger batteries yield less time, so let's not get carried away by capacity alone. In the video review, I will give you the tests with the corresponding results. This device comes with Android 14 and realme UI 5. You know that realme usually adds some additional features, for example, specific RAM for gaming, since this series is very focused on gamers, so you could allocate a certain amount of RAM so that it's only reserved for gaming and your games open much faster. We're also going to find a good optical feedback, that is, it has an advanced vibration engine. So when you're doing these gestures, for example, swiping or pressing or removing buttons, it gives you super good vibration feedback. And of course, it has some other tools that I can quickly mention, such as the smart sidebar where you have access to files, snapshots and application access and other little things. It also comes with 3 years of software updates. In this case, I already have an update available that I'm going to install so I can make the review as adequate as possible. It has 12 gigabytes of physical RAM and it has virtual RAM that you can upgrade to another 12 gigabytes. Although honestly, this seems like overkill to me. Considering you already have 12 gigabytes of physical RAM, I wouldn't even turn on the virtual RAM upgrade feature, but it comes on by default, so in this configuration we're going to try it out. It also has 256 gigabytes of storage, and right out of the box it had 28.1 gigabytes used, so in that sense I think you do have enough space to last you a long time. And finally, the processor is the Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 3, a processor that we haven't tested much, but it should be quite powerful. In fact, in conjunction with the LPDDR5X RAM and UFS 4.0 storage, it should give you plenty of speed. And here are the benchmark results. In Geekbench, on a single core, it got up to 1,788 points, a score that is remarkably high, considering that we are only talking about one core. while in the multi-core score it reached 4,510 points, which is also a very high score considering the price of this device. That is, it is giving us a score close or similar to what gives the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. So practically yes, we are in front of a device that gives a lot of priority to this performance issue. And with respect to Antutu, it gave us 1,374,756 points. It also shows us that it has a lot of power in terms of graphics processing. But this was just a first look. Remember that soon we will have the full review where we will do many more tests to be able to recognize the quality of this device, but as first impressions it can be a very good alternative. I hope you liked this video. If you did, you know you can tell us, and see you next time.